What's up, guys? It's Agent What If, and I'm not back with another video because it's been however long. But it's been a while, and I just wanted to make another video because I really found an interesting series that I think you guys will enjoy. So I'm not gonna just keep leading you on any longer. I'll get right into it. So we begin with everything being as normal as humanly possible in My Hero Academia, except for the fact that Hisashi is actually there this time. He doesn't leave. And yeah, we just proceed with our story until Deku is at the age of 4. Once Deku turns 4 years old, he is still being bullied for being a late bloomer when it comes to a quirk by Bakugo. Bakugo is currently telling him that he has no quirk, so how can he want to be a hero? How it's not practical for him to be quirkless and to be fighting against people. And yes, Bakugo talks like this, if you're wondering why. Yes, a 4-year-old says practical. Bakugo aces all his tests and can get into one of the best schools in the country. He said practical at 4 years old. Anyway, he pretty much continues to tell Deku about how he can't do that because he just doesn't have what he needs for it. Deku's contesting him about it, saying that he can still be a hero even without a quirk and that he doesn't need one. And it's all about how much you want to help people. Bakugo decides that he's going to give Deku a practical lesson, if you will, in why exactly you cannot be a hero without a quirk. He begins to light explosions in his hand and he says, Deku, are you paying attention? Look closely. This is my quirk. I have a very flashy, powerful quirk, Deku. This is what it takes to be a hero, and I'm going to show you why you can't be a hero. And Bakugo begins to let the explosions become more serious, and then he shoots them at Izuku. Izuku puts his hand up trying to protect himself, and he waits for the damage to come. But it doesn't. He doesn't feel anything, actually. It's actually quite weird. Nothing happened and everything's quiet, no one's talking. Usually by this time, Bakugo will be telling him something or making fun of him. So what's going on? And that's when Izuku opens his eyes to see a shield. And Bakugo is stunned. He doesn't understand what's going on. He really can't comprehend why all of a sudden Deku has a quirk when he hasn't had a quirk in the longest and he's been 4 for so long. Bakugo is just sitting there shocked, but Izuku's excited and begins jumping up and down saying, I have a quirk, I can finally be a hero, Bakugo comes out of his stunned silence and walks away knowing that his point is mute now and, well, he was wrong. But he's not going to admit that. Deku can barely contain himself for the rest of the school day until he goes home. He bursts through his front door because he's a walker, because walkers are the best, let's be honest. Anyway, he bursts through the door and Inko is immediately turning around like, Deku, what's going on? And he runs over to his mother and gives her the tightest hug he can possibly muster. But for a 4-year-old, that's not very tight. She laughs at him, chuckling, rubbing his hair, saying, Deku, what's going on? Hisashi gets up off of the couch from reading a newspaper and says, what's going on, Izuku? Is everything alright? And then Izuku looks at his dad and smiles with a face-splitting grin saying, Dad, I just got my quirk. Hisashi looks at his son for a couple seconds and then smiles at him saying, that's great, Izuku. We'll have to go to the quirk doctor one of these days. Izuku immediately starts to pout with the cutest face he can muster saying, but I want to go now. And that's when Hisashi says, you have to make appointments, Izuku. You can't just rush into things. You have to think things through. He rubs him on the head and tells him, come on, why don't you go tell me what happened and what your quirk is, since you said you found out about it. Inko follows behind, not wanting to get into the father-son bonding time, but still wanting to hear what he has to say. Deku pretty much skips over about how Kachan, or is what he called him, Kachan, attacked him, and pretty much just says that they were trying to see if Izuku had a quirk and it wasn't working. But then Bakugo was using his quirk and accidentally turned around and shot an explosion at Izuku. And Izuku put his hands up, manifesting a shield. He kind of paraphrased because he really didn't want Bakugo to get in trouble. His dad noticed the hesitance and didn't really say anything on it because if his son didn't want to tell him, he wasn't going to press him for it. So he realized he had a shield quirk. Hisashi saw a moment to do something that would actually be very beneficial and would actually be one of the driving factors for his son in the future. He says to him, putting his hand on Izuku's shoulder, saying, Izuku, do you want a quirk like Bakugo's? Izuku immediately says, yeah, I want a quirk like Bakugo's. It's super flashy and super strong, and I bet he could beat up all the villains in the world. And Deku then says, yeah, don't you want a quirk like that too, Dad? Hisashi sighs and then closes his eyes, and he looks at Inko, and she begins to get up and walks away just so, they can have their privacy. Hisashi breathes out and says, Izuku, do you know what's the purpose of a hero? And Izuku, in his childish 4-year-oldness, says, to beat up all of the bad guys and protect people. Hisashi then says, you're only half right, Izuku. The purpose of a hero is to protect people. To protect them from themselves by defeating heroes and getting them the help by defeating villains and getting them the help they need, and protecting civilians who have family and friends that depend on them for their livelihood. A hero's purpose isn't to bring harm to another person. A hero's purpose is to protect people and their dreams and their hopes. People rely on you to help them when they have no other person to depend on. You realize that, right, Izuku? Izuku's shocked. He hasn't seen this side of his father ever. His father's never that serious with him. And he can't even respond. Hisashi then says, Deku, it's great to have a flashy quirk and to use it and show off, but it's not as good as your quirk. And do you want to understand why your quirk's the best? Izuku nods quickly, wanting to continue hearing what his father has to say, and he says, Hisashi then begins to say, because the purpose of a hero is to protect, Deku. Always remember that, to protect, not to do harm. Because of that, your quirk is the best. It's not flashy, but it protects people. It's the best at protecting people. You're not someone who's out there to hurt anyone. You're there to protect people. And because of that, your quirk is by default the best quirk there is. Izuku begins to get excited and says, thank you, Dad, and starts hugging him. But then Hisashi breaks his seriousness and starts chuckling, saying, but of course you don't have to be a hero if you don't want to. I'm not pressuring you. And then Izuku screams, no, I want to be a hero. I want to be a hero now. I want to be the best hero there ever was, and I'm going to protect everyone. You'll all see. I'll be the best hero there is one day. Hisashi smiles at his son, saying, I know you will, son. I know you will. But for now, go wash up and get ready for dinner. I'll take you to the quirk doctor on the weekend. It was a Friday, so tomorrow. He was pretty much saying tomorrow. We fast forward to tomorrow. Izuku and Hisashi are currently sitting on one of the chairs outside of the room when a doctor in a white coat, a female doctor, comes out flipping through her clipboard saying, Midoriya. Is Midoriya here? Hisashi then stands up and gets Izuku and says, oh, that's us? Come on, Izuku. He walks into the room and sits down and sits in front of the lady while Izuku is sitting on the bed table kind of thing that they have in the doctor's office. She says, okay, we're going to run some tests on your son. Is that okay with you, Mr. Midoriya? And Hisashi nods, saying, yeah, that's perfectly fine. After 30 minutes of testing and a little while, they discover what Izuku's quirk is. She comes back and sits Izuku back onto the bed table thing, and she says, okay, after we've been studying it for a little while, we understand that his quirk is, for the lack of a better term, a shield. Izuku can manifest walls that can protect things like barriers, like force fields, in a circular direction around himself and around others from at a distance. But his quirk also has a more physical form in the form of the shield that Izuku saw when he first activated his quirk. This shield can be thrown away from him because it doesn't need to be attached to him, and it is solid on all directions. Overall, I would class this quirk as a C+ level quirk, perfect for protection, but not very good at dealing damage. In fact, it is probably not very good at all for damage. So if your son wished to be a hero, he would need some kind of tool or gadget to help him out in that department. But overall, your son's perfectly healthy besides his quirk, of course, and he has not shown any signs of your quirk or his mother's quirk. And Hisashi then says, okay, thank you, ma'am. And Izuku's in his own world as they continue talking, and he's losing his mind. He's saying, yes, I'm going to become the greatest hero ever. I'm going to become the greatest hero, just like All Might, just like All Might. And then we get a little time skip. A little time skip around 10 years later, right? Izuku has been practicing with his quirk this entire time. He's not been skipping a day of practice. His father, realistically enough, actually helped him out the most in his quirk building department. Since his quirk is incredibly strong and incredibly durable, it's actually very impressive. After a little while of experimenting, they found out that Izuku's shield is actually indestructible. It is actually impossible to break in any capacity. Perfectly indestructible. However, his force fields and barriers around things, they, however, are not. The further away from the barrier he is, the weaker it is. And if he's inside the barrier, it gets stronger, but it can still be broken. They learn that his shield is immune to temperature extremes of any sort. It is completely non-conductive and disperses any electrical or energy or any type of energy at all that goes into the shield, making it perfectly safe for him to hold using that. And overall is incredibly resistant to all kinds of damage and has never had a scratch or a fracture in its entire existence of Izuku having it. Izuku, knowing this, knew that his shield would be best for defense, but his offense was lacking. That's why his father enrolled him in some martial arts classes and even showed him a little bit of the moves that he knew, because of course Hisashi actually did know a little bit about martial arts. He was training to become a hero at one point, but decided against it when he found out just how bad some heroes are and how they only do it for the attention and the money. He didn't want to be a part of an organization like that. Izuku's strength, mental strength, has just become even greater. Izuku was also a natural prodigy at all types of ricochet shots, making impossible shots with his shield and making it always come back to him. He even developed a fighting style that's specifically designed for him to use his shield in conjunction with attacks by throwing his opponents off guard, by throwing it at them, and then it hits them, leaving an opening where he catches his shield and continues to pound on them. Izuku's become very good at all types of martial arts for the most part. He's not the best, but he learned a good bit of every type of martial art. Grappling, striking, that kind of thing. Izuku learned that the most important part about throwing his shield is the strength he puts into it. So in his workouts and stuff like that, he typically tries to make sure he can put the maximum amount of power into his throws, and when he throws his shield hard enough, he can actually make it sink into a tree, which is kind of impressive. We then learn later on that Izuku is currently at school. His teacher walks in with a bunch of papers, going through them and sighing repeatedly. His teacher puts it on the desk and then says, "Alright everybody, let's just skip the formalities and get straight to it. I would ask you all what you wanted to do and what you wanted to be in life. But let's be honest, all of you want to be heroes, don't you?" And they all begin to flash their quirks, screaming very loudly, and the teacher smiles and chuckles, saying, alright, everyone calm down. But before he can finish, Bakugo slams his hand on the desk, making an explosion that catches everyone's attention in the entire class. He then says, "Don't compare me to these clowns, Teach. They'd be lucky if they became some D-lister's sidekick. I'm the true special talent here, alright? There's no one else in here who can compare to me." Then, that's when the teacher says, "Bakugo, didn't you want to apply for UA? I mean, with your grades and your quirk, I'm sure you could do it, of course, if you tried. Midoriya, didn't you also want to apply?" Bakugo then sneers, looking at Izuku, saying, "Oh, Izuku wants to apply? His quirk is just as passive as he is. How's he going to be a hero if he can't fight?" And everyone starts to laugh, but Izuku doesn't really care, staying as stoic as ever. He then tells Bakugo that the purpose of a hero isn't to hurt people, but to protect people. And everyone starts being quiet, but doesn't really do anything. The teacher sweat drops at how quickly the atmosphere changed, and then dismisses everyone. We then go to the 10-month time skip, but Deku doesn't really need that. Let's just say he improves it so that he can actually throw his shield hard enough to cleave straight through a tree, and that's his most exciting training. Anyway, now we're on to the day. Izuku's applying to UA. And after he's applied, he got accepted and he's taking the entrance exam. Izuku does very well in all of the other exams because he's smart and he's been practicing, so of course he does well in them. Maybe not the top, but he does well in them nonetheless. He continues. We get to where they're about to do the robot portion of the test. President Mike is telling them the rules and explaining everything before he all of a sudden just says go, and everyone stops for a second and then starts running. President Mike says, did you think that you would get a normal countdown in an actual fight? No. You're already rookies. Don't make any more mistakes. They begin to run at the robots as quick as they can while Izuku's just slowly jogging, breathing nice and cool. He's making his way through the middle of the pack when the first set of robots come out into the open. Immediately, Izuku summons his shield and throws his shield as hard as he possibly can at a robot, making the shield dive straight into the robot's head, splitting it in half. The shield then comes back to Izuku and he catches it onto his arm like Captain America does it. Everyone is immediately shocked because Izuku pinpointed it and hit it immediately. Everyone starts clearing the way as Izuku takes his shield off of his hand again and throws it once more while running forward, and his shield ricochets off of the head of multiple two-pointers, getting him many more points. Everyone realizes that if they don't hurry up, this kid is going to steal all of the points, so they keep going. By the end of the time, Izuku has a reasonable enough number of points to become 4th place in his section. Not the best, but definitely not the worst. Everyone in the booth is currently examining Izuku because they find his quirk interesting. It's the only quirk that they've seen thus far that's specifically for defense, and it's interesting. All Might takes an interest in him, especially saying, this young one seems very talented. What's his name? Aizawa then says, I believe that one's name is Izuku Midoriya. What, have you taken a liking to him? And All Might says, I just might have. Aizawa then says, you can't hog all of the good students, alright? Some of us need some disciples as well. That's when everyone looks at Aizawa saying, really? And Aizawa says, what? I'm not that lazy. And everyone's sweat drops and just continues to look away. Aizawa scoffs saying, whatever. With that, I think I'm going to end this episode. If you guys enjoyed it, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment, and all of those other great things. To do those things because they're amazing and great and good for your health. I'm not sure about that last one, but I'm going to say that anyway. But, yeah. Also, there are probably going to be some unforeseen events in this story, so if you guys want to see a part 2, just let me know in the comments below. And I know I've been off of making videos for a little while, but that's because, well, you know, things happen and I was kind of having, I won't say writer's block, but I guess writer's block. So yeah, but I came up with an interesting story. I hope you guys enjoy it, but I'm gonna stop rambling. So with that being said, peace.